started with a simple favor. My neighbor Sarah asked me to help clean out her garage. I didn't think much of it. Just a Saturday morning, a few hours of lifting boxes, maybe some small talk when she looked at me covered in dust. Her voice trembling as she asked, "Do you even know what you're doing to me?" I realized this was no ordinary chore. Those words hit me like a freight train. And suddenly, the garage wasn't just a mess of old tools and forgotten junk. It was the start of something I never saw coming. I stood there, my hands still gritty from handling boxes, trying to process what she meant. Her eyes held something raw, something I couldn't quite name, and it left me feeling like I'd stumbled into a moment far bigger than I'd expected. That day, that question changed everything. I've lived next to Sarah for about 3 years now. She's the kind of neighbor you notice, but don't really know. We'd wave when one of us was grabbing the mail, maybe exchange a few words about the weather or the new stop sign they put up at the corner. She's in her late 30s, I'd guess, maybe early 40s. Hard to tell exactly. She's got this quiet way about her, always polite, always keeping to herself. Her house is one of those tidy bungalows you see in older neighborhoods with a small front yard where she keeps flowers in neat rows, always blooming, always trimmed. The garage, though, was a different story. From the outside, it looked like it hadn't been opened in years. The paint on the door peeling just enough to hint at neglect. I never thought much about it until she brought it up. I'm no stranger to helping out around the neighborhood. I've mowed lawns for folks who couldn't manage it, fixed a fence for the family 2 houses down, even helped old Mr. Jenkins across the street with his leaky faucet one summer. It's just what you do when you live in a place like this small. Town tight-knit enough that you pitch in when someone needs a hand. So when Sarah showed up at my door that Friday evening, her hands fidgeting, her voice a little hesitant, I didn't hesitate to say yes. She stood there on my porch, the porch light casting a soft glow on her face. Asked if I could spare a few hours to help with her garage. "Sure thing," I said, leaning against the door frame, trying to keep it casual. "What's the deal? Just moving some boxes?" She gave a small laugh, but it was the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. "It's a bit more than that. It's kind of a disaster in there. I just need to get it sorted, start fresh." I nodded, figuring she was just overwhelmed by the task. Garages can get like that. Stuff piles up. You put off dealing with it and suddenly it's a mountain of junk. "No problem. I'm free tomorrow morning. Say 9. "9's perfect," she said. And for a moment her face softened like a weight had lifted just a little. "Thanks, Mike. I owe you one." I waved it off, told her it was no big deal, and went back to my evening. Honestly, I didn't think much of it. A garage clean-out? Done worse. My own garage wasn't exactly a showroom, tools scattered. Few boxes I hadn't touched since I moved in, but I knew how to handle a broom, stack boxes, maybe lug some stuff to the curb. Figured we'd be done by lunch. Maybe grab a coffee as a thank you and that'd be the end of it. Couldn't have been more wrong. The next morning, I showed up at her place right on time. Dressed in old jeans and a t-shirt, I didn't care about getting dirty. The air was crisp. That early fall chill that makes you glad to be moving around instead of sitting still. Sarah was already out front. The garage door rolled up and I got my first real look at the chaos inside. It was worse than I'd imagined. Boxes were piled haphazardly. Some split open with papers spilling out like they'd been forgotten mid-move. There were old bikes leaning against one wall, their tires flat, chains rusted. A lawn mower sat in the corner, its handle caked in dust, and shelves along the back were stuffed with paint cans, some so old the labels were peeling. A tangle of Christmas lights hung from a hook, looking like they'd been tossed there in a fit of frustration. It was the kind of mess that makes you wonder how anyone let it get that bad. But I didn't say that. "Wow," I said, stepping inside, my sneakers crunching on some loose gravel. "You weren't kidding about the disaster." She crossed her arms, looking almost embarrassed, her shoulders hunching slightly. "Yeah, it's been a while. I kept meaning to deal with it, but life, I nodded, not pressing her for details. "God, it's sometimes things pile up literally and figuratively. Life gets in the way, and before you know it, you're drowning in stuff you meant to deal with years ago. All right, where do you want to start?" She pointed to a corner stacked with cardboard boxes, some sagging under their own weight. Those first, I think. I need to go through them, see what's worth keeping. We got to work. I started hauling boxes to the center of the garage, setting them down on a tarp she'd spread out to keep things organized. Sarah knelt beside them, sorting through papers, old photo albums, random knickknacks, a chipped ceramic angel, a stack of expired coupons, kid's toy that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. She was methodical, almost too careful, like each item held some kind of weight I couldn't see. Didn't ask questions, just kept moving stuff, carrying empty boxes to the curb for recycling, stacking heavier ones to the side. The morning passed quietly, just the sound of rustling paper, the occasional clatter of tools as I shifted things around, and the hum of a distant lawn mower somewhere in the neighborhood. Around 11, we took a break. Sarah brought out a couple of water bottles and we sat on the steps leading up to her house. The sun was higher now, warming the concrete, and I could feel the ache in my shoulders from lifting. She handed me a bottle, her fingers brushing mine for a second longer than I expected, though I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too busy wiping sweat from my forehead. "Thanks for doing this," she said, staring at the garage, her voice soft. "I know it's not exactly fun." "Hey, it's not so bad," I replied, taking a swig of water. "It's sitting on the couch all day." She smiled, but it was tight, like she was holding something back. "It's just hard, going through all this stuff. It's like digging up the past." I glanced at her, curious, but not wanting to pry. Her words hung there, heavy, and I could tell there was more to it than she was saying. "Oh, I get that. Old stuff can bring up memories." She nodded, her eyes distant, staring at something I couldn't see, more than I expected. I didn't push. I'm not the type to dig into someone's business, especially not a neighbor I barely knew. We finished our water, the bottles crinkling as we set them down and got back to work. The next hour was more of the same, moving boxes, sorting, tossing junk. I found an old radio buried under some blankets, its cord tangled like a snake. I fiddled with it for a minute, plugged it in, and got it to crackle to life. Playing some classic rock station Springsteen, I think. Sarah laughed for the first time that day. A real laugh, bright and unexpected. And it felt like a small victory. "You're handy with more than just boxes," she said, tossing a broken picture frame into the trash pile with a little more force than necessary. "I have my moments," I shot back, grinning. For a while, it felt easy, like we were just two neighbors tackling a project, the music filling the silence. We worked well together, falling into a rhythmy hauling, her sorting, the pile of trash growing by the curb. But I started to notice things. The way she'd pause over certain items, a faded postcard with a beach scene, a kid's drawing of a lopsided house, a chipped coffee mug with "World's Best Mom" barely legible. On the side, her fingers would linger, her face tightening like she was afraid to let go. I didn't say anything, but it was clear this wasn't just about cleaning a garage. There was something heavier here, something personal, and I could feel it in the air, like static before a storm. By early afternoon, we'd made a dent. The garage looked less like a hoarder's den and more like a work in progress. The bikes were lined up neatly, the shelves cleared of rusted cans, and the Christmas lights were untangled and coiled in a box. I was dragging a heavy box of books to the curb, old hardcovers, musty and dog-eared, when Sarah called me over. Her voice was different, quieter, almost hesitant. She was kneeling by the tarp, holding a small wooden box, no bigger than a shoebox with a carved lid that looked handmade. Her hands were trembling slightly, just enough for me to notice. "Mike, can you look at this?" Her voice barely above a whisper. I wiped my hands on my jeans, the dust leaving streaks, and walked over. "What's in it?" She didn't answer right away, just opened the box with careful fingers, like she was afraid it might break. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded red ribbon that looked like it had been tied and untied 100 times. The envelopes were yellowed, some with smudged ink, but I could make out names and addresses written in careful looping handwriting. Sarah's eyes were fixed on them, and I could tell she was fighting to keep her composure, her lips pressed tight. "These were my dad's," she said finally, her voice catching. "He wrote them to my mom before they split." Didn't know what to say. I'm not great with emotional stuff. Never have been. Stood there feeling awkward, my hands shoved in my pockets. You want to keep them? I asked, keeping my tone neutral like we were talking about old magazines. She nodded almost too quickly, her fingers tightening on the box. Yeah, I have to. It's all I have left of him. I could hear the crack in her voice, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about decluttering. This was about her confronting something she'd been avoiding, maybe for years. I didn't know the details, still don't, not really. But I could feel the weight of it, heavy as the boxes I'd been hauling all day. I set the box aside carefully, like it was made of glass, and we kept working, but the mood had shifted. Sarah was quieter now, her movements slower, like she was carrying something invisible. I didn't ask questions, didn't try to fill the silence. I just kept moving, giving her space. We worked until the sun started dipping low, the light turning golden and casting long shadows across the garage. We'd cleared out most of the junk, sorted what she wanted to keep, and stacked the rest for donation or trash. My shirt was sticking to my back. My hands were gritty, and I was ready for a shower. But I felt good, like we'd accomplished something real. Sarah, though, looked drained. Not just tired, but like something had been pulled out of her. Hey, the face was pale, her eyes shadowed, and I wondered what those letters had brought back. I was about to call it a day, already picturing a cold beer in my couch when she stopped me, her hand on my arm. Mike, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Do you even know what you're doing to me? I froze, caught off guard. Her hand was warm, her grip light but firm, and her eyes were locked on mine, intense, like she was searching for something. There was dust in her hair, a smudge on her cheek, but she looked like she'd let down a wall I hadn't even known was there. What do you mean? I asked, my throat suddenly dry, my heart picking up speed. She let go of my arm, stepping back like she'd just realized what she'd said. Her face flushed and she looked away toward the garage. Nothing. This was a lot more than I thought it would be. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to ask what she meant to push for an explanation. But the look on her face, half embarrassed, half vulnerable, told me she wasn't ready to say more. You okay? I asked instead, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She nodded, but it wasn't convincing, her arms crossing like she was holding herself together. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thank you, really. I told her it was no trouble, that I was happy to help, but those words of hers kept echoing in my head as I walked back to my house. Do you even know what you're doing to me? It wasn't just about the garage. I knew that much, but what was it about? Was it the letters, the memories, or something else entirely? I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stepped into something deeper than I'd meant to, something I didn't fully understand. I went home that night, showered off the dust and sweat, and tried to shake it off. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she'd looked at that box, the way her voice had trembled, the way her hand felt on my arm. I kept replaying that moment, her words hanging in the air like a question I couldn't answer. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the street light casting faint shadows through my window. I didn't sleep much that night, my mind turning over what she'd said, what she hadn't said, what it all meant. The next day, I saw her outside watering her flowers like she did most mornings. She waved, same as always, but there was something different in her smile, something I couldn't place, a little hesitant maybe, or a little more open. I wanted to ask her about it to see if she was okay, but I didn't. I just waved back, grabbed my coffee, and went about my day, but I kept an eye out for her over the next week. Not in a creepy way, just noticing. She seemed quieter than usual, spending more time in her yard, trimming her roses, pulling weeds, like she was avoiding the garage. I thought about offering to help again, maybe finish what we started, but something held me back. Her words kept nagging at me like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. About a week later, she knocked on my door again. It was evening, the sky bruised with clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. She was holding the wooden box, the one with the letters, her fingers gripping it tightly. Her face was serious, but not closed off, not like before. Can we talk? She asked, her voice steady, but soft. I let her in and we sat at my kitchen table, the box between us like a silent guest. She set it down, her fingers tracing the carved lid, the wood worn smooth from years of handling. "I've been reading these," she said, her eyes on the box, the letters. "I haven't touched them in years. But after the other day, I couldn't stop." I nodded, leaning back in my chair, waiting for her to go on. I didn't want to interrupt. Didn't want to break whatever thread she was following there from when my parents were young. She said, her voice low, like she was talking to herself as much as to me before everything fell apart. "My dad wrote about how much he loved her, how he wanted to build a life together, how he'd do anything for her. I never knew him like that. The time I was old enough to remember, he was gone." She paused, her eyes glistening, and I stayed quiet, letting her talk. I could feel the weight of her words, the way they carried years of pain, years of questions. "Cleaning out the garage brought it all back," she said, her fingers still on the box. "It's not just the letters, but everything. The fights, the way my mom cried when he left, the way she'd look at me sometimes like she was waiting for me to leave, too. I've been carrying that around forever. And I didn't even realize it until you were there helping me dig through it." I shifted in my seat, unsure what to say. I'm not good with this kind of thing. Never know the right words. "I didn't do anything special," I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Just moved some boxes." She shook her head, a small smile breaking through, though her eyes were still wet. "No, you did more than that. You were there. You didn't push me to explain or make it weird. You didn't act like I was some fragile thing that needed fixing. You just helped. It made me feel like I could face it, like I wasn't alone." Her words hit me hard, harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much it meant to her, how much those hours in the garage had stirred up. I thought I was just being a good neighbor, doing what anyone would do. But to her, it was something more, something bigger. I swallowed, trying to find the right thing to say, but all I could manage was, "I'm glad I could help." It sounded lame even to me, but I meant it. She looked at me then, really looked at me, her eyes searching mine like she was trying to see something I didn't even know was there. "I'm still not sure what I meant the other day," she said, her voice softer now. "That thing I said. It's like you being there helping me through that mess. It made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time, like I could trust someone again, like I could let go of some of this weight I've been carrying." I didn't know what to say. Trust. That was a big word. And I wasn't sure I deserved it. I'm just a guy who lives next door. Not some hero, not someone who fixes broken things. But the way she was looking at me, like I'd given her something she'd been missing, made me feel like maybe I'd done more than I realized. Maybe I'd been more than just a pair of hands. We talked for a while longer about her dad, her mom, the years after he left. She didn't go into too much detail, and I didn't ask. It felt like she just needed to say it out loud to let it out, like opening a window in a stuffy room. She told me about growing up with her mom, how they'd moved around a lot, how she'd always felt like she was trying to prove she wouldn't leave like her dad did. She talked about the letters, how they showed a side of him she'd never known, a side that made her angry and sad and hopeful all at once. I listened, nodding, asking a question here and there, but mostly just letting her talk. When she left, she hugged me quick and tight, her cheek brushing mine for a second. "Thanks, Mike," she said, and I could hear the gratitude in her voice, real and unguarded. I watched her walk back to her house, the box tucked under her arm, the sky now dark with clouds. That was a month ago. Since then, Sarah and I have talked more. Not about anything big, just small stuff. The weather, the new coffee shop down the street, the way the neighborhood's getting busier with new families moving in. But it's different now. There's a connection there, something unspoken but real, like a thread tying us together. The garage is still a work in progress, and I've helped her a few more times moving the last of the boxes, organizing what's left, even putting up some new shelves she bought. Every now and then, she'll bring up the letters or something else from her past, a memory, a story, a moment that's been weighing on her, and I'll listen. I don't always know what to say, don't always have the right words, but I'm there, and that seems to be enough. Her words from that day still stick with me. echoing in my head when I'm mowing my lawn or sitting on my porch at night. Do you even know what you're doing to me? I think I'm starting to understand at least a little. It wasn't about the garage. Not really. It was about showing up. About being there when someone needed it, even if you didn't know it at the time. I helped her clean out more than just boxes that day. I helped her start letting go of something she'd been holding on to for years. Something that had been buried under all that junk. Maybe, just maybe, she's doing the same for me. I don't know where it's going, this thing between us. Maybe it's just neighbors being neighbors a little closer than before. Maybe it's something more. I don't think either of us is ready to name it. Not yet. But I do know that every time I see her now, watering her flowers or carrying groceries from her car, I feel something shift inside me. Something I didn't even know was there. It's not love. Not yet. But it's something warm, something real. And for now, that's enough. I keep thinking about that day in the garage. Dust in the air, the weight of those letters, the way her voice broke when she asked that question. I didn't know what I was doing to her. Not then, but I'm starting to see it now. Sometimes you don't realize how much a small thing can mean. How a few hours, a few boxes, a quiet presence can change everything. I helped her clean out her garage. Sure, it feels like we're both cleaning out something bigger, something neither of us can quite put into words. And I'm okay with that. For now, I'm just glad I said yes when she knocked on my